Well, welcome everyone back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. We're going to have a really fun conversation today around kingdom triage. Now, you may already know what that word means, especially if you're in a healthcare industry. If you have no idea, let me just say this has everything to do with deciding, making decisions about your time. Because sometimes a lot of things are coming at you at once and you can't do it all at once. And so sometimes we have to have boundaries, and sometimes we have to be okay with saying no, and sometimes we have to pause to pray over decisions, and sometimes we just need to jump in. And so you're going to be really blessed by this conversation today. So I'm excited to welcome Leniesha Norwood to the podcast today. So Leniesha, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I love the fact that we met through the podcast. That's a really fun story. We've been able to already collaborate together, to do some coaching together, but I want to get to know you and let my audience get to know you. So tell us a little bit about you. What are you juggling in this season of life?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I am just so excited to be here with you. I'm Leniesha. I'm an ICU nurse, and I'm actually in school for a family nurse practitioner as well. I'm a homeschool mom, Christian podcaster, and ministry leader. And the ministry is called Walk Like Enoch. And I'm also a life coach for nurses. And so currently I work with nurses who want more. They want more than being at the bedside. And so they don't necessarily hate nursing, but they just want to do something outside of that. And they want to do something that they love, a dream or a passion. And so where I come in is I sit with them, I meet them where they're at, and we go through my framework, which is just the kingdom triage framework. And so this just transforms their lives into an unrecognizable place. They won't even recognize themselves at the end of this. And so through that, they're able to operate fully in their calling and purpose, that their God-given calling rather, and build what He's calling them to build. So I have to say it's been an incredible journey, and the Lord just began to teach me about business back in my 20s, and now I became a nurse in my 30s, and so I've been in the medical field over 22 years. And as a bedside nurse, I also owned and operated a franchise and of course, ministry as well. And that brought me to this place where He gave me a vision for nurses and a passion because we are His hands and feet in healthcare. And so through all of that, I've lived and breathed through before COVID and through COVID and afterward. And so I currently still work bedside. And I still run a business outside of that. And so that's where I'm at. I'm super excited to be here. This passion, it just burns within me because I know that nurses are equipped to be leaders, and a lot of the time we're used as minions, but we have the skill set to own large businesses and corporations. And so I'm here to tell every nurse that you can build generational wealth through your passions.
I love it. I love your passion. And I mean, you guys, did you just hear all the different hats she's wearing? So if you are a nurse, number one, like come back to us because I know you're probably running around, doing things. So come back to us. We're speaking straight to you. But if you're not a nurse, I want you to listen up as well, because what we're going to be talking about today, I believe, applies to any area, right? When we have multiple callings and we feel very passionate about that and still have the same 24 hours in a day that everyone else does. So we sometimes have to
Yes.
understand this triage thing. So fun story, Leniesha, just so that you know, I actually wanted to be a nurse. That was like my childhood dream, was to grow up and be a nurse. And my grandmother ran a labor and delivery floor. And I remember having a conversation with her one day. I don't know, I was maybe junior high age, maybe I wasn't that old yet. And I shared with her that I got really queasy at the sight of blood. And she just kind of said this comment like, maybe you need to think again about this whole nursing thing. So I never ended up
Yeah.
going to nursing school. My daughter's about to graduate from nursing school, so I can live vicariously through you guys. And yeah, appreciate all that you do at a very pivotal time in so many people's lives, especially in the department that you're working in. So I always love to hear a little bit of the story, because
Yeah.
you are oftentimes the person that you are serving now, right? And and thinking back to where you were, what you needed, what you didn't know, those kinds of things. So tell us a little bit about the journey of how God brought you to this place personally. Whether it was through some of your own struggles. Oftentimes it's not a quick and easy. We rose to the top right away. We kind of did things the loop de loop way, I call it. But yeah, just kind of a little bit more about your journey and why this is such a passion for you, to help women in that same way.
Yeah, that's a great question. So really, there is a combination of things that led me here. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it really took surrender, because there's so much that we try to plan on our own, and we have, these goals, these deadlines that we want to hit and say, okay, by this age, I want to be here. And by, or I want to have this degree by then, or this certification by then. Especially with nursing, we always want to have all these extra certifications so that we can start to evolve in our nursing skills and that kind of thing. But for me, it truly was surrender, because I had a whole plan of, I went into the beauty side, and I went into doing aesthetics, and I thought, okay, I'm going to open up a med spa. I'm going to do all these other things. But the Lord led me completely in another direction, took me into popsicles of a franchise. And it was like opposite of everything I would ever think. And that's how I know He's speaking to me, because it's not something that I picked, but I still had to be obedient to that. And so my journey was, going into nursing. Of course, there's a story. There's always a story. And so, long story short, my grandmother had esophageal cancer. And at the time, I didn't have like advanced medical knowledge. And she really could have had something as simple as a peg tube to help her with her nutrition. And she was afraid to do it because she didn't understand it. She's Korean, and she didn't speak any English. And so at that point, I was still a medical assistant at the time. I was doing that for 15 years, but I didn't have that nursing knowledge to just say, hey, it is okay for you to get this. So she, essentially starved to death. And unfortunately, we lost her. But through that, it gave me also a passion to go into nursing so that I can educate people on, hey, this is okay if you take this route. Or, everybody has their choice, but our job is to be their advocates, and we have to be educated to be their advocates. So now, taking that outside the bedside, I'm advocating for nurses, not just patients, because we are patients too, but I'm advocating for nurses to have a better life, to be able to serve the Lord in the passions that they have, and to be able to grow in those things without fear, because there's such a mindset behind, well, I can't leave stability. I need to stay here, and this is like what I'm going to have to do, clock in and clock out for somebody the rest of our lives. But that's not the truth. And we can still clock in and clock out for someone while we're building our business. But guess what? When you start bringing in that harvest, and you can actually leave nursing, guess what? You can do nursing outside of the bedside. There's so many different things. There's nurse coaches now. There's so many different things. So that's how that passion came, was really from losing my grandmother. But everyone has, a story. But yeah, that's pretty much how it started.
Yeah, and I just love how God does that, right? And here you just had this desire to nurture and care, take, and step into something that was going to allow you to do that. I ended up going a teacher route, is where I went, thanks to some other family members. Most of my family was educators. It was just that one grandma who was in healthcare. And yeah, I often say, like, I used to teach junior high kids to talk back to you in a classroom, and now I get to teach women online who actually want to learn. Don't always do their homework, but that's okay.
Yeah.
They do have a desire to grow and learn and all of that. And so God uses all of it, right, in bringing us to where He wants to. So let's dive a little bit more into this idea of kingdom triage. And I want you listeners to be listening for how this relates to not only things in your business, but also things in your life, because I think there's so many, applications both ways. But I always like to start with a good definition. This is the English teacher and me coming out. So for those who don't know what they don't know, let's start by defining triage and why it's so essential in the medical world, specifically in your world of nursing. And then we'll kind of take it into some business things.
Sure, yeah, of course. So I actually wrote this down for the listeners, but triage is defined as the rapid initial assessment of patients to prioritize care based on the severity of their condition, ensuring that those with the most critical needs are treated first. And so the triage process, it includes assessment and categorization and then action. And so as Christian women business owners, this is really crucial to understand your priorities and how to organize them so that your business could flow like a well-oiled machine. And just the same way in the hospital, when we triage our patients, we are taking care of them to make sure that each one of them is staying hemodynamically stable, depending on the severity of their condition. So especially the ED nurses know this very well. If you're going into the emergency room, that's what they're doing. They're looking at, what are your symptoms? Is it a stroke symptom? Is it a heart attack symptom? They're going to go first, so you're looking at all of those things so that you can treat people in the order that they came. They're going to take that way over a runny nose, so it's really
Sorry if you're the
essential.
one sitting in the waiting room, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, you're sniffling over there.
Can you go back to the definition? I got most of it written down, but I also want to hear it again myself, and I also want to make sure that everybody's got that. So a triage is the rapid initial assessment, and go ahead and share the whole thing.
The rapid initial assessment of patients to prioritize care based on the severity of their condition. And so this is ensuring those with the most critical needs are treated first.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that you are very, I guess maybe kind of run by a little bit of tyranny of the urgent when you were in nursing, especially in some of those departments, kind of what is maybe the pace for those of us who aren't in that setting? What is maybe a typical shift like for you, and how is this triage process, helping you? Because I would think there can be so many things coming at you at once. So how is the triage process actually really maybe kind of freeing and helpful and creating some order out of what could really be chaotic in a medical situation?
Yeah. So with me in the ICU setting, it really depends on what group of patients I get. If I'm getting people who are step down, they're not quite critical yet. And those that are critical, you typically have two patients. And so with that setting, you may have someone that is on a ventilator and someone that isn't. And so typically I'm going to see the patient that's on the ventilator first because I want to make sure that they're getting things like oral care so that they're not inhaling any bacteria. They're not going to aspirate anything that's pooling in their mouth. It's like little things that people wouldn't think about. But I'm going to do that because I don't know if the first nurse or the next nurse offgoing had done that in the last hour or so. So typically in the ICU, we do that like Q2, which is every 2 hours. And then, then I would go to the next patient. So I would categorize based on the severity of their condition and then what medications are needed. If I'm in the neuro ICU, then if it's a stroke patient, they may need to have, or seizures, they may need to have their Keppra dose, at a certain time. So I'm going to do that before I go give someone their carvedilol or whatever, so it just depends on their condition. So I'm really having to differentiate between the two and what the needs are first.
Yeah, which is such an important life skill and I think business skill. So let's kind of take this from the medical world into the business world, right? So as you're thinking about, I love assessment was that first step. Then there was this categorization and prioritization. And then there's the action, right? That information from the assessment and the categorization and prioritization leads to the action steps that we take. So maybe kind of flesh that out a little bit because you are working with nurses who understand it when they're on the floor, but they're also wanting to run a business, right? And we still have to kind of triage because let's be honest, there can be a lot of shiny objects, squirrels, demands on our time and our attention, right, coming at us all at once. And it may not be life and death like what you may be experiencing in your medical world, but it can be, really debilitating as business owners. So how do you feel like this is a need for us as Christian women business owners to know how to triage?
It's really important. I think the number one thing for triage is us. We have to pour into us first.
Okay.
And I've actually been a lot more intentional with that because I actually learned from you that we need that AM refill and we need the evening refill. But I love starting and ending the day with myself and with the Lord. That's so important. And so I've really, added that into like my daily framework because that's so important. I can't pour out if the Lord hasn't poured into me or I haven't allowed him to do that, if I haven't slowed down to sit still with him. But then after that, then having my daily tasks that are lined up basically like a to-do list, but I'm going to take from that to-do list, what are the big hitters that I have to take care of that day and other things that can really wait, throughout the week or the next week or even the month. So I'm going to take what's the most important thing that I have to accomplish this month and then categorize from there. And then I have, it broken down from business to family to, groceries, whatever it is. I have it broken down in every area of my life. And so that way I can pick out the most important things and then have the other ones fall in. It's kind of like your oranges and Skittles that you talk
right?
about. Yeah.
I love this. And it's so interesting. I've had this conversation ongoing with several different groups of business owners recently. And that is that so often we go to the Skittles because it just feels more fun or enjoyable or things like that, or it just feels easier to check the box, which can be let's be honest, it doesn't take that much effort to put a Band-Aid on somebody, but if that's not what they actually need first because they're bleeding out, it doesn't matter how good it feels to have put the Band-Aid on. We have to evaluate. Yeah, where is the priority, of all of this and start there first instead of just at the top of the list. It's one of my pet peeves about to-do lists is that very often we make them in order of what we thought of first, which doesn't mean that is the order in which we need to do them. So I love the fact that you're like, no, get it out of your brain, get it down on paper, then let's sort this and figure out where is the time that this, lives in. I want to talk about a little bit about maybe what happens when we don't triage. So if you want to start in the medical world, what would happen if you went in and you didn't triage with the patients that you're working with? And then how would a lack of being able to triage in the right way affect us as as business owners? What would be maybe some of the consequences, the costs of that if we're not doing it?
Oh yeah, this is really good. So definitely in the medical world, that means your patient can decline.
Mm.
And if you're not there to assess them first thing, when you're taking responsibility, you've assumed care of that patient, then it's on you. It's on you for that next 12 hours to make sure that they are stable. And if you're going in the wrong direction, if you're looking at the smaller tasks that don't really matter as much, then you're going to miss something. You're not going to be as vigilant. And then you can also get flooded and overwhelmed. And that also translates into business because
Yeah.
guess what? We have tons of tasks, especially when you're starting out in business and you don't have a team yet. Then, you have everything. You're the receptionist, you're doing all the emails and the phone calls, and you're having to, do
Yes.
the accounting and all those things. And so when you're the one man show or one woman show, you can be super overwhelmed with everything if you don't have a way to organize it. And then you're not going to build in excellence and you're not going to operate in excellence because you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's not a good way for us to be.
Right. And I see way too many, I call them busyness owners. They're working really hard. They're putting in probably the 12-hour shifts, in their home working it, but they're not getting anywhere because they're focusing on the things that, yeah, just feel urgent, but aren't necessarily urgent. So when you think about whether, but you probably don't hear somebody in the medical world saying don't triage, right? But like, do you ever run across any bad advice that we've been given by the gurus, the experts, just the world around us when it comes to, like how we respond when, especially what feels like things are in crisis mode, or we have so much coming in at us? Maybe it's something that you were told or thought for a while that kind of steered you in the wrong direction, or that you're seeing as you watch others.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of sayings. I think one of the worldly sayings that stuck with me is like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and it's
Yeah.
like, that's tough. I had to like rewire my brain and, and really redeem that and say, like that scripture that says, I am the vine and you are the branches, and really just, he is the vine. We are being poured from him, so we have to be able to sit still in the secret place
Mm.
with him. And from there, that's where we operate. And it's really like, even if we're not sitting in the secret place, the best thing is to still operate like you're sitting in the secret place all
Mm.
day. And
Yeah.
so that's when you really have that supernatural peace, just like the word talks about, the peace that surpasses all understanding. We have to operate from that place to have that. And so I know with the world, it's like we just keep going. We just, sleep when I'm dead. We have to hustle, or we're never going to have anything. But really, building wealth is not clocking in and clocking out for someone else because you're always going to be capped. There's not a way that you're going to bring in that amount of income to build generational wealth for your family.
Yeah, so interesting. I just having a conversation with a close friend of mine who was in an administrative role during COVID. And I just was asking her how she responded to that stress. And she's had some other stressful things happen in this role recently. And she's like, I'm able to come from that place of peace and calm. And that makes all the difference. Right. I'm sure as a nurse, you go into a room, if you're all over the place, the patient's going to be a little frazzled, their family's going to be unsure. When we walk into, a situation with a client or a team member or things like that, like if we are, already way up here, then that's going to affect everyone in the room because we're that one they're looking to. And so not that we have to do it perfectly, but I love the reminder of operating like you're in the secret place. And that's how
Yeah.
we can abide and continue to meditate on scripture, even if our body is moving. So let's move into like, okay, so what can we do, right? So now we understand a little bit more about what is triage, why it's needed. How, like, let's kind of talk about how do we be then good stewards who are both faithful and fruitful with our time? Because again, like, we could be going 24/7, whether it's with our careers or our businesses or our families, our homes, all these things. So how can we start either taking some steps or thinking through some things that are going to point us in the right direction?
Yeah, number one, I would say is boundaries. Boundaries outside the home and even boundaries with yourself. Because when we're super excited about building something, it's so easy to, and I'm guilty of this, stay up till 1 a.m. because you're like, oh, I just want to keep working on this graphic. I want to keep working on these things. You're excited, you have that fire built. And you have to have a boundary so that you can still pour into all the other places. So if you're married and you have a family and you've got to cook and do laundry and all those other things, have boundaries with that. Even have certain days that you do those things. Don't try to fill everything out every single day. And, you can have a timeline, but the boundaries were most important because someone's going to say, hey, can you have coffee? Can you have lunch? Can you come to this birthday? Can you come to this baby shower? And there was a lot of no's for me. I may send something, but there had to be some sacrifices made because I calculate all of the time from getting ready to driving to the place to then spending time there and then thinking I'll be there 2 hours, but then talking for four and then driving back and having to try. So you lose all of that
Yeah.
time.
Right. It's not just
So
the
it's
hour of the
like,
party. Right.
right. And of course we want to have community, but in the building phase, we also have to be disciplined to
Mhm.
build what the Lord is calling us to build. And then guess what? We have a lot more time later and we probably have more money later to spend with those people. So it's
Yeah.
like you just have to have those boundaries. And
I
really
love,
just also,
go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say just finding your tribe too that understands that because not everyone's going to understand it.
No, no. And we have to be okay with that, right? We have to communicate the
Hmm.
boundaries and the reason for them. And that's one thing I find a lot of women don't do well. They may be able to, put some boundaries around their time as to this is what it's time for, one of our signature questions we ask around here. But if you haven't communicated that to anyone around you, then they are going to ring, ding, and ping you whenever something comes to mind that
Hmm.
they need or want. And you're going to then feel that guilt of saying no and things like that. Whereas I think if we can communicate that ahead of time, hey, during this time period, this is what I'm focusing on. And then when I'm done, we
Hmm.
can, or that kind of thing can be really helpful. And one of the things I just wanted to kind of pop in that you and I have worked on for you personally, you have the
Hmm.
days you work, which are a 12-hour shift, right? So, I mean,
Yep.
that's a long time to be like up here mentally, physically, being the person that's caring for all these other people. And so as you and I talked, you're like, when I come home, I'm not really able to pour into my business and pour into these other things like homeschooling and stuff like that because you're just so already depleted. So knowing that about yourself is really healthy. And then you and I worked on what does a home day look like, and what are the time zones in that day so that we can put some healthy boundaries around where you want to be intentional about your time going, how to
Hmm.
protect that so that you can do the things that you want to do. So, okay, so boundaries is that first one.
Yes. So the next thing is rest and reset in
Mm,
the presence of the Lord and make time for it. Add
yeah.
it into your calendar just like you do anything else, and then hold yourself accountable to that because He is going to refill you. He's going to fill you to full and overflow and give you that increase. He's going to extend your time, but you're also going to gain wisdom, discernment, and creativity because He does redeem our time and the things that we're working on and we're like, in the hamster wheel of our minds. The Holy Spirit will just download it to you. When you give him your time, the Holy Spirit just downloads it to you. You don't have to spend 10 hours working on it because he'll give it to you in 1 minute if you just take the time to sit with him. So I think that's the number two thing, rest and reset.
Yeah, and sometimes for me, it's getting out for a walk. I just
Yeah.
need that physical and mental reset. I got to that point yesterday. I mean, there were gale force, like, Wizard of Oz type, weather going on outside. And I was just like, I have got to get outside. And I found a window. It was still super cloudy and pretty windy, but not quite so bad. And I need, even though my body wasn't laying down, it was that reset and rest for me. And I got so many great, there were some things I was able to let go of. There were some ideas that came to mind, and so it can be, like you said, sometimes we're not just putting our body prostrate, right? But we're actually
Yes.
moving it in a different way that allows us to be open to those things. I don't know about you. I find my best ideas come when I'm not in front of my computer or not in front of a piece of
Yeah.
paper. We're open
Yeah.
to that, right? So we have to, yes, block that time in for sure. And I always tell people,
Yeah.
like, you don't have time not to because it will cost you more time down the road and from a health perspective as well as, your emotional wellness and all those other things too. So, okay. So boundaries and rest and
Yes.
reset, which I can see how those two tie so beautifully together, right? And
Yes. And one other thing I have is find the busy work that's taking your time. And
mm,
so for me, one major change that I made was grocery delivery. And I know some
yes.
people like to go pick out their stuff, but it changed my life. It saved me the drive time and the shop time and the parking and the whole thing. It freed up time for more intentional things like recipes. There's recipes I want to try, but guess what? I have more time now to make those recipes because I didn't spend all that time driving and shopping. It is life changing and it actually saves me a lot of money because I'm not perusing and like, oh, this is new. Let me try this. I'm like, no, I'm getting exactly what I need. I'm saving money because
Girl,
I'm not rabbit trailing down the store like, oh, let me go over here. So it just saves so much time.
yeah, and it's interesting how, yeah, when we have some simple systems in place, one thing my mom taught me back in the day was like make your grocery list in the order of the store so you're not zigzagging all over the place. But I too, once COVID hit and I started doing grocery pickup, I haven't gone back.
Yeah.
So I was living a little further out where they weren't dropping it off at the time. So, but even just the idea of just I pull up in the parking lot and within minutes there I put it in my car is, yeah, that's
Yeah,
just
the
time like
curbside.
that we could better put into other things. So maybe for you it's not groceries, but think about maybe it's having somebody come in and clean your house once a week or once a month. Maybe
Hmm.
it's somebody that's, helping with some laundry type things, or, just kind of what are those little things that, yes, it needs to be done, but you're not the only person on the planet who can do it. And is there a way to like do some delegating or hire someone or just and free up that time and bandwidth, like you said, for actually making the recipe instead of pushing the cart? I love that. I've heard you mention this a couple of
Yes.
times, and that is what I call a time tax. So
Okay.
often, right, we don't think about like, okay, how much time is this really going to take me and all the ways it's going to take that time. Even
Yeah.
just purchasing something new from the store, oftentimes we look at the price tag on the whatever the item is, and that's the cost we see. We're not paying attention to what is this going to cost me to go to the store and get it? What is this going to cost me to now set it up? What is this going to cost me to
Hmm.
use it, to maintain it, to repair it, to replace it? And I love the fact that I heard you in several places say, kind of like a consider the cost. Like look at
Yeah.
before you say yes to something, whether it's an invitation or whether it's, an obligation, either way, what is this really going to take me time wise? Be realistic about it so that you can make a very wise decision because you may or may
Yes.
not have the time. And it's going to depend on this is where the triage comes in, right? If it's not a high priority thing, then
Yeah.
maybe it just doesn't
Hmm.
happen or doesn't happen today. So, yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
that's so good.
Yeah. So, what are ways that, like as you're living out Kingdom Triage, both in the medical field and as you're building your business and caring for your home, how are you seeing this, the impact of it, the benefit of it, what is this doing for you? What is this doing for your clients? When you're talking to women who are, juggling a lot of things, but, working in that kind of setting as well as starting to pursue some of these other passion projects.
Yeah, essentially, it is literally buying back your time in a way that is priceless. It's so valuable to have that extra time and hearing like, Leniesha, this is awesome. I was able to spend an extra hour with the Lord this week just because of the changes I made in the schedule and, things like that. And it's not like I'm constantly working on time with people, but that is a big part of it if you want to build something else. Because like you said, working those 12-hour shifts and like you and I worked on, those 12-hour shift days, I'm not doing anything. I'm literally serving at the hospital and that's it. And then I'm coming home and I'll, love on the family. But those other days are going to be high productivity, but it's not going to be in a way that's going to burn me out because I don't want to be burnt out. I know how that feels. So
Yes.
I don't ever want to go back to that place again. And so I want all the other nurses to know how to do this. I want my Kingdom nurses to know you can build something outside of bedside and still walk in peace in your home. And so it has been life-changing for us. My family knows, hey, I have a group chat with the family. Hey, I'm going to be podcasting. I'm going to be recording. No sounds in the kitchen. Like
Right,
everybody
right.
knows I have a certain time frame of, okay, we're homeschooling from this time to this time. I'll be gone from appointment. Like we are all like in sync, which is really great being on one accord. Not all families are on one accord.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been a long time to get here. We weren't always like this, but I had to also trust in the Lord to teach me how to set these boundaries, but also teaching or trusting mentors and coaches like you to help me to get to certain places too. Even if I thought I knew it all, I found like exponential value in what you taught me. And I was like, man, this is why we have each other. This is why we link arms with one another, coaches, mentors, whatever. Like I'm so for it. So I'm really grateful the Lord brought us together.
Yeah, I love it, right? And it's even if like I even still come have to circle back to things or like learn it at a new level or go layers deeper, and I think we're always paying attention to the season of life we're in, the season of business, the season, of our walk with the Lord and, always coming back to do what you told us to assess, categorize, prioritize, and take action. So,
Yes.
what would be one piece of encouragement or advice that you would give to a woman listening who maybe feels like she's bleeding out right now? Maybe she feels like everything feels urgent, everything feels needed, everything feels like, I need to be giving it time and attention right now and I don't have it all. What would you say to her?
I would say, take a hard stop for a minute,
Mm.
and really assess where you are. I would say if you feel like you can't fit everything in the day, then your priorities aren't set yet. And so, setting your priorities and your boundaries are going to bring you that peace. And get a coach, get a mentor, talk with Lissa, schedule with Lissa. If you're a nurse and you want to build something, schedule with me. I think it's so important to have someone that you can be accountable to that doesn't know you too, because they're not going to be biased. So they're going to say, look,
They
this
can
is
see what
this
we
is your
can't see,
homework.
right?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to see all the things and give you homework that you can be accountable to. But also, it feels good because it's kind of like having a fire lit under yourself because you're like, oh gosh, I have to because my coach is going to be on me
They're
about
going
it,
to ask me, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So really important. I think definitely finding a coach or a mentor, but have that hard stop and talk with the Lord about, what am I doing? What did I put on my plate that I wasn't supposed to? What burden did I pick up that I'm not supposed to be carrying?
Mhm.
Because I'm only going to carry what the Lord tells me to carry.
Yeah.
There's certain things that are for this season. There's other things that are for the next season. I didn't know I was going to be podcasting. He told me 2 years ago I was going to be podcasting. And then, oh no, 3 years now. And then I started it last year. So really, it's really about discerning those seasons, and read Ecclesiastes. It's great for that, learning what season you're in.
Wow. I love this. I love this. And speaking
hmm
of, yeah, getting support and things like that, I mean, we could keep talking all day long. You and I have a lot of fun together and have no problem filling the time. I know there are probably some nurses who are listening or somebody who knows a nurse. So please share this episode if you know a nurse that would benefit from this conversation, and even just others. Like, what would be a good resource or a next place to go if somebody wants to really kind of step into what does this kingdom triage stuff look like?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website. It's www.theconsecratedceo.com. I also have a Facebook group for nurses. It's called the Nurse to CEO group, and that's facebook.com/group/Christian women entrepreneurs. And then if you want to sign up for the email list, you can do that at the website as well. And I'm going to be releasing some prayers for nurses, deliverance prayers for nurses, and that'll come out to my email list first. So be sure to get on there. And then I have my podcast, The Consecrated CEO. And so that's the places you can find me. I'm super excited to meet all the nurses that'll come from this.
Right. I love it. I feel like we find our tribe and we're like, oh, wow, you get me. Right. So I'm highly
Yeah.
encouraged if you are a nurse listening or you know a nurse, please reach out to Leniesha and start taking advantage of some of the resources that she has and find out what she's offering and listen to the podcast. So many great things because we can't do this alone. We need community. So speaking of which, we will link all those things in the show notes. And I always invite you as listeners, come join the conversation after the episode over inside the Redeem Her Time community, where I invite our guest in there and you can act in real time, ask some specific questions, learn a little bit more from Leniesha and other guests that I have on the show. And we can support each other as we really pursue the calling that God has put on us and these passions that we have. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I know so many women are going to be blessed by our conversation. And so I always like to end with a final question to get a little bit more into your heart and calendar. One of my signature questions is, what is it time for? So how would you answer that question when you're looking at this season for you of life and business?
It's time to get refilled.
Mm.
It's time to get refilled so that you can pour out in what the Lord is calling you to do in your God-given calling. It's time to get filled up so that you know what your God-given calling is outside of nursing, and trust in Him. Take that step forward and trust in Him. It's going to be a domino effect in the kingdom.
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, that will have a good
hmm
roadie, return on time invested, when we're seeking him first
Yes.
and letting everything else fall into place. So thank you so much for being with us
Yeah.
today, Leniesha. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys next time.